What's up, guys, and welcome back. We're starting our next unit. Last unit, we looked at categorical variables, and this unit is over quantitative variables in the normal distribution, where today we're going to talk about what does quote-unquote typical mean. So we're going to dive right in. Uh, so we're going to approach this kind of starting off talking about your project piece first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, if I were you, and give you my question that I come up with and go through kind of all the parts associated with it. So if you're watching this video for the first time, understand that this is it's not hard, but there's a lot of pieces to it. So make sure that you are staying focused and engaged going through. And if you miss a day, obviously you should be watching the video or getting notes, working with your group, figuring out what it is you need to be doing. So we're going to start off by just imagining that you're a data detective and your goal is to explore an interesting question comparing two groups of your choice. It could be anything measurable. So this sounds kind of like last unit, where you were to come up with a question and you're comparing two groups, only those two things happened to be not measurable, but like my example in class was like uh, my two groups were boys and girls, and then what we were our variable that we're looking at was colors, like favorite colors. So this is different, meaning our answers are not going to be words, so to speak. They're going to be numbers. So you're going to collect data. We're going to spend a little more time on this than we did last unit. Analyze it like a statistician, create visuals, and discover how typical or unusual your own measurements are compared to your group. So here's kind of a rundown on what you're going to do. I didn't have y'all do this for the last unit, but you are going to need to get your question approved by me first. I do have a list of things that you can choose from, or you can um, uh, suggest something to me and I can approve it or not. So you do need to get your question approved by me. Even if you pick one on my list, I still need to kind of talk to you about that. There's actually a checklist you're going to fill out. So choose two groups to compare. It can be boys and girls, athletes versus non-athletes, or something creative you come up with. Make sure your question is clear and exciting. Then you're going to collect your data. We talked about how to do that last time. This time it may be a little bit different depending on what you're asking. Last time was pretty much should have been just a survey, but I'll kind of go over. I'm not going to go over the different types of statistical, like the different types of statistical studies that we can do really in depth, but I'll give you some suggestions on what you can do to actually collect your data. But you want to be a data collector, and just like last time, you're going to have to find at least 50 data points for each group. So this means that you will need to ask classmates, friends, or family for their measurements, like height, shoe size, or whatever fits your question. And notice height and shoe size are both. If I asked you what's your shoe size and you said 10 and a half, that is a number. What is your height? 5'11". That is a number, right? These are quantitative answers. What's your favorite color? Green. That is categorical. So this is all about quantitative variables. And then we're going to crunch the numbers. We're going to have various things that we do here. We're going to calculate what's called a measure of center and spread. We'll talk about that in a second. We're going to create graphs just like we did with the last unit to visualize your data. Only our graphs are going to be a little bit different because we're not dealing with categorical data. And then we're going to draw a normal curve with the mean and standard deviation, which we'll talk about as we go through, clearly marked. And this helps see the shape of our data, which is also important when we're looking at quantitative data. Continuing on, we're going to find out where you and your partner fit in that data set. So for instance, if I'm 5'11", I want to see where I fit compared to like men, men 18 years or older. Like, where does my height fit compared to the rest of the population, type of thing. So we're going to do that stuff. Calculate what's called a z-score to see how your personal data compares to your group. Are you in the middle? Are you above or below average? And then you're going to use this to find what percent of the group are you taller, bigger, faster, or smarter than. It just depends really on what your question is. Then we're going to test our theory. So last time we had the chi-square test, and that was for categorical variables. We're going to do something similar, but this is called a t-test, and it is for quantitative variables, so numerical type of things. We're going to use the t-test, and just like last time, we copied our stuff into that table, and then we looked at the p-value. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to copy our raw data into this template, and then interpret what it says based off of what that value is. And then you're going to turn this into a Google slide or a Canvas slide and show your findings. So I have a rubric on the back that you can check that is kind of like a slide by slide type of thing. There are a couple things that are not going to be on your slideshow, which it's hard to do digitally. So I'm going to have y'all do it on a poster and include some things on there, which is actually a big part of your grade. So that's kind of what you're going to be doing. I know that sounded like a lot without really knowing, but we're gonna break this down day by day, and so you can see. So that's what you'll be doing for this project: collecting data, analyzing it, and sharing what you find. Before you get started, we need to learn some important ideas and tools that will help make sense of your data. So we're going to explore how we can describe whole groups of numbers using just a few key values. So how can we describe a big list of numbers with just a few? So imagine we're looking at a long list of test scores out of a 100. So these are all test scores. Just like last time when we looked at all of those after we collected our data, we had that big long list, and it just looks like a bunch of numbers here. And there it just looked like a bunch of like a big long survey with boys and girls and red, pink, green, whatever the colors were all together. And we organize that, but we're not going to organize this on a frequency table like we did. We're going to organize this differently. So looking at every number can be overwhelming. And what we want to do is we want to find a few numbers that help us tell us kind of what's typical and how spread out the data is. So if you think about like all these test scores, what are some questions you might be asking? Like maybe some common questions are who had the highest score, who had the lowest score, maybe what's the average score. Also, like maybe how spread out like the grades are, like were they all kind of random, just all over the place, were they kind of bunched together, those types of things. So those are the questions we're going to be looking at in with our project. They show us what's usual, what's average, and what stands out as unusual. So using a few numbers to tell the story. So that's what we're going to start off with. These special numbers that we're referring to are called summary statistics, and this is in your notes, your first definition. A summary statistic is a number that sums up and provides important info about a group of data. They give us important information about the data without having to look at every single number, and they help us quickly understand the overall picture. So my question, you guys are going to come up with the question, and I'm going to say, are boys taller than girls? So that's my question. So what am I? First of all, just so we're aware, I've got two groups. I've got boys and girls, just like I did last time. And then also, what am I measuring? Well, I'm measuring heights. So think about heights. What is that? That is a number. This is quantitative. So today we'll look at data about boys and girls' heights. Our goal is to use numbers to compare these two groups fairly. And then how can we do this with just a few numbers? So to explore this, we will use real height data collected from boys and girls from all my AQR classes. This question will guide our investigation as we learn to analyze quantitative data and apply statistical tools. So what number represents typical height? So what we're looking at is we're looking at okay, so I'm kind of showing a little bit. I've already formatted this a little bit, but this over here, this stuff right in here, what I'm looking at is I've cleaned this up from what I originally saw, but we have this all broken down like this, and you just have you have your categories, boys and girls over here, and you have all of these over here. So if we're trying to compare these, we want to get to where we summarize this stuff. Summary statistics, that's just what we were talking about. So let me go back to the slide real quick and see where I was at. Are boys taller than girls? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. Went there. So we want one number to represent typical height for boys and one for girls, and then we can compare those two groups easily. So we're going to look at something called measure of center, which is a type of summary statistic which shows the middle of the data, and these numbers help tell us where the data is centered at. So when we look at a whole big long distribution of numbers, like what is the center, the average? And there's actually two common ones. They're the mean and the median. So the mean and the median we should be familiar with. Mean more so. That's more common to understand. That's our common known average where you add up everything and divide by how many things that you added up. And then the median is the middle value, and that's where you line everything up in numerical order, and you look at the middle number, and that would be the median. These help us find the middle or the average value of a data set. So what does the mean? This means that the mean is what most people call the average. You find it by adding, I just explained that, adding up all the numbers and dividing it how many numbers there were. And it's useful for when you are, when you have fairly, when numbers are fairly even without any extreme values. And what I mean by that are like, if you look at test scores, for instance, and uh, like all the grades are between a 75 and a 100 except one who made a 19. Like that 119 is an extreme value. That's going to pull the average down from what we would normally expect, right? Or if all the grades were below like a 65, somewhere between 0 and 65 spread out around there kind of evenly, and then you had 100, that's going to boost the average up. So mean is useful for when we don't have extreme values. So we're going to calculate the mean height for boys and girls using our spreadsheet. I need to learn to type. I have so many typos here. So let me go over here. So what we're going to do first, let me pull up the spreadsheet, and I'm not going to do like I'm not going to really do it with you. I'm going to show y'all what mine kind of looks like. But what I did here is I deleted the, I guess, the unnecessary columns or something like that. I can't remember what it looked like originally. I formatted this and I froze this top row. So I clicked on this. I went insert, sorry, not insert, view, freeze, and then freeze one row. And I formatted this to say gender, height. I created borders, colors. I made it all caps, things like that. And then from here, what I did was I went through and I sorted this between boys and girls, and I probably the easiest way to do this, to be honest, is to click on this right here and go to sort from A to Z. And then we can take our, like we're going to make two different columns like I have here in D and E. And now I can say, okay, from here all the way down to here are boys' heights. They don't need to be in order, but I have boys' heights. I'm going to right click, hit copy, then go over here and this and do Control V. And then I can go down here for my girls' heights, starting from here, scrolling all the way down, and do the same thing. I'm going to right click, copy, and then go over here and do Control V. So now I have my two groups to where I can kind of look at their data separately. Okay. Now this is what I want you guys to do, and I'm going to give you all a second to do this. If you're watching the video or something like that, you should be doing this and trying to make yours look like mine, because I'm kind of building the math or assisting you guys with building a lot of the math portion for your project. So once I have this done, we're going to calculate the this is not the right one. It is the right one. Yeah, it is the right one. I just, something deleted for some reason. Okay, so at the top, what we're going to do is, see how I have these two things. We're not going to do all of this at once. Okay, all we're dealing with is these first few rows. So, and what I would start off with is making one and then copy and pasting it. So we're going to format, if y'all can see, we're going to, what I want y'all to do today is just this. I don't know if it's necessary to do that, but this is what we're doing today. That's it. Okay. And so you need to format this. We're going to call this measure of center because those are two measure of centers. We're going to look at mean and median. And we've talked about how to find the mean already if that's just the average. So if you look right here, you should be able to see I'm finding, and we're dealing with boys summary statistics. So I'm going to do equals average for the mean. And then I can just go through and at the top of cell D, since that is where my boys data is, I can just click right here at the top, and it will say D through D, and that's basically saying all the numerical values in column D. I'm going to find the average for. Okay, and so I get that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to median, and for the median, I'm just going to type in equals the word median and then do the same thing. And what I have here is once I do that, let me scroll over. So I'm gonna. I don't want to mess up my sheet, but I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this right here. So, and then I'm going to delete it here in a second. Okay. So once I have the boys stuff like this, then I can go over here and I can do, click on this cell up here and I can do Control V. And now I have pretty much all the math still in there. My formatting's similar, and I can change this word to girls. And so I don't have to like redo it. I want to make sure that this is in the right spot. I have these arrows, so I'm thinking it's probably not. We're going to get the average from the girls. That is in column E. So I'm just going to change these V's to E's. That should be an E. This should be an E. And notice how this matches up with this cell right over here, which it should. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Equals, this is going to be median. And then I'm going to do D, column D, because that's where my, nope, it's not column D. What column was it? E. It's column E. Okay. So, and then once again, once you have that, we're also going to do both. So both. So once you have that done, you can just do the same thing. You can highlight these right here, right click, copy, and then go up here to like cell S1 and then hit Control V, and it should do that, and then just change this. You'll just need to go through and change the formulas, but the formatting should be the same. I'm going to delete this. The only thing that we want to do here is that when we do this part, the E's and the F's, we're going to do that from right here for column B, because this is where all of our boys and girls combined are going to be. So, and you can see that that's where these are. This is column B, average of column B, median of column B. So we have that information. Sometimes the mean can be misleading, though. We have very high or low numbers, which we call outliers. Like I just talked about a second ago, they pull the mean away from what we would call typical. So, like, you know, I could have a normal average of a 79, but that 19 makes me look like I have an average of a 70, when most of my grades are way above a 70. So home prices, for an example, one super expensive house can raise the average home price a lot. And a lot of the times you might hear, what is the average home price? And you might be thinking to yourself, that is talking about the mean, and it's not. And let me show you average home price in Trophy Club. So we see a range, right? sits in the 600s to 900s. But then we have, notice right here, the very first thing that we have says median home price. And what this does is it takes the middle value out, because or it gives us the middle number, because you can have like a neighborhood like around us where you have a lot of homes that are worth you have a lot of homes that are within that $600,000 to $800,000 range, or maybe $750,000 to $900,000 range. But then on a street still in Trophy Club, you can have a $300,000, $350,000 home, or you can have a $2.5 million or $3 million home that's going to pull that average up, that may be really high or really low with the big overall picture. So using the median is a better representation on the whole picture of what we're looking at, when we do not have high, like if we have extreme high or extreme low values with respect to the majority of the group, the typical value of the group. So median is the middle value, and we arrange those in order. It's not affected by outliers or extreme values, so it shows a better typical value when the data is skewed. And when the data is skewed, just means that you have a higher or lower value, an outlier, so to speak, that is pulling your average up or down depending on what that value is. So mean versus median, I want to touch on that today, like when to use each one of these, because you guys know how to do that, but I want you to try to understand, like, they're both centers, measurements of center, and used to describe a group of numbers, but sometimes one is more better to use than the other. And we're going to talk about, when we look at shapes of graphs, how we can kind of tell, because sometimes it might not always be obvious. But when we go and we look at data, we can look at the shape and see which one is a better fit to describe the data. But with just what we know right now, mean, if we have outliers or extremely high, low numbers that are away from what most of our distribution is, we probably wouldn't want to use the mean. We would use the median. It would be a better fit. So use the mean when the data is balanced with no extreme outliers. Batting averages are an example where the mean is used versus the median. Median is when the data has outliers or is skewed, like home prices, or incomes. Right? You can have in a neighborhood, you can have somebody that is a millionaire where everybody else is like lower middle class. Maybe not likely, but I mean, it's possible. Knowing when to use each is important for accurate descriptions. And you don't necessarily have to be talking about a neighborhood. You can be talking about a city even. So now find the mean and median for boys and girls heights in your spreadsheet. So I've kind of talked y'all through how to do that. So if you're watching this video, you can make sure you get that done. Talk with your group about which number better represents the typical height for each group. And then why might the mean or median be a better case? So real quick, let's think about that real quick. I'm going to pull up my spreadsheet, and it's like we don't have any shapes to go off, but looking over here, these numbers are relatively close together. We've got 70.1 and 70, 64.4 and 64. Over here, we have, these are very close. I would say, without knowing anything, either one of these would be appropriate to use. I don't know anything about outliers at this point in time. Those numbers are relatively close. I would say mean or median are both appropriate measures of center. So you would just pick one. You'd say the median. But if you do think about this, like, most people are going to be in a sample are going to be in a typical height. And I feel like when I did this one time, I did have an outlier. Like I had like one girl in the class. It was I think, I don't know, 4'7" or 4'8", and then I had a guy that was like right at that threshold of outliers in terms of tall. So, but I don't think he was quite an outlier. But anyways, you would typically think that that with height, that would be something that we're going to look at later, called a normal distribution, which means that the data is pretty much symmetric distribution, and we would use the mean. But either one of these measurements of center right now is fine. But you do need to make sure that you label them and do what I'm doing for your particular project. So that's going to be kind of the first part after you collect your data. And then the next thing is after okay. In summary, mean is the average influenced by all values. So mean is always influenced by everything. It's affected by everything, including outliers. Median is the middle value. It's resistant to outliers. Both help us summarize data, but work best in different situations. Knowing when to use each helps us to describe data more accurately. So I've changed y'all's delta math, and it's actually not 9.1, so I should probably update this. It's like this unit 8 now. So, and these are not necessarily what you're going to be doing, I don't think. Maybe they are. I guess I need to change that. So, anyways, that is all we have for today. Let me know if you have any questions.